Rostov, winter 1989. The wind whistled through the Soviet concrete blocks, carrying the scent of cold metal and dirty snow. Children had been disappearing for years. The official newspapers spoke of drifters, thieves, stray dogs. But behind trembling curtains, the mothers knew evil had a face, that it walked through the frozen mud and boarded the morning train like everyone else. Inside the interrogation room, Andrei Chikatilo stayed silent. His skin looked ashen, his eyes hid behind thick glasses. He smiled for no reason, a brief, almost ashamed grimace. On the table lay a few typewritten pages, his confessions. "I was thirsty," he had written. The police had read that line so often it hung in the room like a cursed prayer. Approach. Look at this detail, a small sketch scribbled in the margin of the report, a half-drawn black-horned figure, scrawled and then crossed out. Inspector Burakov never mentioned it to anyone. The drawing appears in no official file. He found it in the inner pocket of the killer's coat, among bits of dirt and dry skin. Chikatilo hid his memories behind the facade of a mediocre schoolteacher. On paper, he was a man without substance. In truth, his life had been fed by a hunger, war, famine, humiliation, impotence. Each murder was a victory over emptiness. He claimed he heard something calling him from the forest, an ancient, raspy voice brushing against his thoughts just before the act. The train sped between Rostov and Shakhty. Night after night, he chose his prey among the travelers. A young girl, a lost boy, a peasant woman returning from the countryside, always the vulnerable ones. He lured them with banal promises, a meal, a coin, a place to rest. Then came the silence, the forest, the mud. What came after, the official chronicles softened into vague medical terms, yet the investigators understood. Each murder followed a private pattern, almost ritualistic. Burakov kept telling his colleagues there was a logic, a geometry to the crimes. The bodies appeared near water or under crooked trees, often at dawn. The wounds always in the same places, the order of actions unchanging, a cadence, like a rite without an altar. One night at a crime scene, an officer noticed a small circle of stones pressed into the ground. Nothing official ever mentioned it, but Burakov remembered. Local peasants spoke of ancient cults, of a dark deity once called Chernobog, the lord of misfortune. They said blood was offered to him to ward off famine. That same word appeared in one of Chikatilo's old school notebooks found in a drawer. Chernobog, written in chalk beside a childish sketch. Imagine the scene. A thin, hungry boy in a wartime Ukrainian village. The war took his father, the famine swallowed his brother. People whispered the boy had been eaten. The child stared at the hard earth and decided God had forgotten him. So he invented another god, older, crueler, one that answered. Psychiatrists would later diagnose a neurotic desire for dominance and fractured sexuality. But in his mind, he was delivering punishment. The command came from elsewhere. He saw himself as a tool. Through the Soviet winter, the murders became a secret code, each corpse a message no one could read. The media avoided the details. The KGB suspected a conspiracy, not a lone man. Yet all paths led to the same face. A discreet schoolteacher, always late, glasses foggy, worn-out leather briefcase in hand. When the police finally caught him, he laughed, calmly. No panic, no struggle, as if he'd been waiting for this. "I am God's mistake," he said. The room froze. It wasn't a confession, it was a proclamation. They emptied his pockets, a rope, a knife, a small notebook. On one page, a single line. "The shadow claims what belongs to it." No one ever learned what he meant. He later explained that before each killing, he felt a metallic taste in his mouth, a whisper in his left ear, a signal. "Like someone was breathing behind me," he said. The psychiatric experts noted auditory hallucination. Yet there was something in the way he described it that unsettled even the most rational observers. During one interrogation, he quoted a passage from an old religious book banned in the USSR, a Polish translation about original evil. It spoke of a god of darkness feeding on human helplessness. Chikatilo claimed he'd come across it by accident, yet recited the sentences word for word. Outside, snow kept falling over Rostov. The people lived in fear. The newspapers began calling him the Butcher. Priests lit candles in silence. Criminologists trusted only statistics. And still, in the frozen silence of a prison cell, Chikatilo looked up at the bare ceiling and whispered, "I was only a messenger." His hands trembled on the table, open like an offering. The guard stepped back. When the trial opened, reporters believed they were witnessing sheer madness. The man shouted, laughed, changed his tone, begged an unseen shadow. Some spoke of hysteria, others of a performance, but a few noticed something strange. During the fits, his voice turned almost deep, unfamiliar. That night, Inspector Burakov sat alone in his office. He read his notes again. Beside the dates, he had drawn a sign, two overlapping triangles forming an eye. He didn't know why. Maybe to give shape to a suspicion, something extended beyond ordinary cruelty, a structure reason refused to recognize. The case was closed. The killer caught, tried, executed. Everything seemed finished. Yet in the archives, one file remained open without explanation. Inside it, a single photograph, a snow-covered field, trees twisted northward. One detail had gone unnoticed before. In the frozen mud at the center, a perfect circle, darker than the rest. And what if the man who killed wasn't the only one trying to feed the shadow? Rostov, a few years after the execution. The archives smell of yellowed paper and cold dust. A local historian, Markin, opens an old box stamped with Chikatilo's name. Officially, he's researching the major criminal cases of late Soviet years. In truth, he's chasing something else, a crack in the official story. He finds it in a side document slipped to the bottom of the box, unsigned, faintly typed, transcript of a forgotten secondary interrogation. One line makes him pause. The suspect referred to an ancient Slavic black god, master of night and misfortune. The name is misspelled but readable, Chernobog, approach. See this detail, the word underlined twice in red ink, then crossed out. Next to it, someone's note reads, mystical delusions, ignore. Markin does not ignore it. He follows the trail. In Slavic legends, Chernobog embodies the dark side of fate, misfortune made flesh, a god more feared than worshipped. They blamed him for long winters, failed harvests, vanished children. Whispered pacts lingered in folklore. Give him a drop of blood, and he spares you the rest. In a school essay written by young Chikatilo, found in annexed archives, the boy mentions a black god who sees in the forest, even at night. In the margin, a crude drawing, tall figure, open arms, standing among trees. The teacher's red comment reads, Andrei, stop telling such stories, underlined twice. Later at trial, a military psychiatrist reported the murderer often described a recurring presence. When I walked into the woods, he said, I knew I wouldn't come back alone. He spoke of a pressure behind his shoulder, less a hallucination than a certainty. For him, that force existed, demanding its hunger. Experts translated it into medical language, dissociation, projection of guilt, delusional construct. On paper, it made sense. But one thing bothered Markin, the consistency of his personal myth. Each crime pulls Chikatilo closer to a very old, almost archetypal image. The choice of locations, forests, isolated fields, riverbanks, mirrors the sacred spaces of pre-Christian peasant cults. The way clothes are cut, the way bodies are left exposed to the elements, looks like involuntary offerings to an invisible force. An Orthodox priest, questioned discreetly by the historian, speaks in a low voice. People here do not say that name out loud. Chernobog is the worst of man, taken for an external god. When someone does something unforgivable, he blames the shadow. That is exactly what Chikatilo does. Time and again, he tells his judges, I was only a tool. They used me. I controlled nothing. This way of speaking sounds like an inverted prayer. Where a believer would say, God saved me, he declares, the shadow took me. To a rational investigator, all of this reads like a defense mechanism. To him, however, the belief is absolute. He laughs when questioned about his responsibility. "You don't understand. You still believe in your little order," he snaps one day, exasperated. Markin cross-checks the dates of the murders with old pagan festivals that survive in rural folklore. Equinoxes, solstice nights, the shifts between seasons. A troubling number of killings fall within these grey areas of the calendar, when people once lit fires to ward off dark forces. Statistical coincidence? Maybe, except that Chikatilo keeps talking about days when the night weighs heavier. An audio recording, quietly stored away, captures a strange scene. The killer sits in handcuffs while a psychiatrist questions him. "Who is the shadow?" "The one who takes everything when the hunger starts," Chikatilo answers. Hunger for what? For life, for warmth, for flesh. When people can't stand the emptiness anymore, they sign without reading. Did you sign? Long ago. I was a child. Here, two interpretations collide. For the psychiatrist, this contract marks the moment a child, crushed by misery, resigns himself to cruelty as his only language of power. It is not a real pact, just an autobiographical metaphor. For those who still believe in old gods buried under the Soviet surface, this story echoes a familiar pattern. A human offers his violence to a dark entity in exchange for the illusion of control. Come closer again. On some crime scene photos, Markin notices an odd arrangement of discarded objects. A coat spread out like a cloth, shoes pointed north, branches snapped into a broken cross. None of this was logged as symbolic at the time. Yet, taken together, it forms a visual language. Near Rostov, an old peasant tells the historian that once people feared the men of the woods, those who wandered too long among the trees and came back with something else behind their eyes. "We said they had drunk the shadow," he whispers. In his confessions, Chikatilo uses the same expression. "After the first killing, I drank a shadow that never left me." He speaks of relief, then of lack, then of growing need, an addiction wrapped in sacrilegious imagery. At this point, the story can be told in two ways. Dry, judicial version, a man broken by childhood, harboring severe psychosexual disorders, slides into serial murder. To live with himself, he builds a private mythology around a black god, borrowed from hazy folklore and forbidden books. His mind weaves an inner cult to justify the horror. Inner version, the one he inhabits. An ancient force notices the fracture in a starving child inside a ruined country. It seeps in like water into a crack in the ice. The child grows up convinced he has been chosen by this force, constantly watched by it. Each murder becomes, in his perception, an offering that quiets the surrounding night. Observable reality leans obviously toward the first reading. The man remains responsible, whatever mask he gives his impulses. Inventing Chernobog, begging him or blaming him, does not change the decision to board that train, approach that child, take out that knife. Yet the mask matters. It reveals how some crimes root themselves in an imagery deeper than raw brutality. Chikatilo did not see himself merely as a lone monster. He saw himself as a priest of a cult no one had asked for, serving an invisible altar in the middle of the marshes. One day, a guard reports having caught him murmuring in his cell, eyes closed, palms flat on the floor. "Thank you for this hunger," he whispered. "Without you, I would have been useless." In his mind, the voice answering him came from elsewhere. To the outside world, it rose from the darkest part of his own psyche. The line between demon and drive blurs inside his head. What a theologian might call possession, a psychiatrist would describe as mental collapse in a world stripped of stable moral bearings. In the end, the number of names given to that inner force changes little. One man chose to embrace it. Dozens of others paid for that choice. When Markin closes the file, the light over modern Rostov is fading. The buildings have been repainted. The newspapers speak of the market economy, new money, holiday sales. The earth does not forget. The forests are still there, the same paths, the same trees twisted toward the north. On his way back, the historian stops at a small church. He lights one candle for the victims. Then, after a pause, a second one. This one he sets aside, near a dark icon, without a word. Not for Chernobog, for the very idea that a man might offer his humanity to something he believes stronger than himself. In his notebook, he writes, "Maybe the real demon here is the moment you stop saying no." The next file he opens will hold another killer, another name. Chernobog will give way to other abysses, older and wider, borrowed from the nightmares of an American writer who never set foot in Rostov. The crimes, however, will keep searching for gods to blame, and somewhere, thousands of kilometers from the Russian steppe, a man convinced he is averting the apocalypse by killing in the name of a cosmic entity will begin to hear a voice as well. That one will not rise from Slavic forests, but from the starless gulfs imagined by Lovecraft.